This is a pretty extraordinary development on the COVID front. The head of the Department of Microbiology and Immunology at Tel-Aviv University and one of the leading Israeli immunologists has written an open letter criticizing not just the Israeli, but the global management of the coronavirus pandemic. His name is Professor Ehud Qimron. Hope I'm pronouncing the name properly. Qimron. Mr. McConnell, would you look at the pronunciation of that? Qim like Mary, Ron like Nancy. The letter was written in Hebrew, by the way. It was translated. And here is what he wrote. History will judge the hysteria. 2 years too late, you finally realize that a respiratory virus cannot be defeated and that any such attempt is doomed to fail. You will not admit it because you have admitted almost no mistake in the past 2 years. But in retrospect, it is clear that you have failed miserably in almost all of your actions, and even the media is already having a hard time covering your shame. You refuse to admit that the infection comes in waves that fade by themselves, despite years of observations and scientific knowledge. You insisted on attributing every decline of the wave solely to your actions, and so through false propaganda, you overcame the plague. And again, you defeated it, and again, and again, and again. You refuse to admit that mass testing is ineffective, despite your own contingency plans explicitly saying so. You refuse to admit that recovery is more protective than a vaccine, despite previous knowledge and observations showing that non-recovered vaccinated people are more likely to be infected than recovered people. You refuse to admit that the vaccinated are contagious despite the observations. Based on this, you hope to achieve herd immunity by vaccination, and you failed in that as well. You insisted on ignoring the fact that this disease is dozens of times more dangerous for risk groups and older adults than for young people who are not in risk groups, despite the knowledge that came from China as early as 2020. You refuse to adopt the Barrington Declaration, signed by more than 60,000 scientists and medical professionals, or other common sense programs. You chose to ridicule, slander, distort, and discredit them. Instead of the right programs and people, you have chosen professionals who lack relevant training for pandemic management, physicists as cheap government advisors, veterinarians, security officers, personnel, media, and so on. You have not set up an effective system for reporting side effects from the vaccines, and reports on side effects have even been deleted from your Facebook page. Doctors avoid linking side effects to the vaccine, lest you persecute them as you did with some of their colleagues. You've ignored many reports of changes in menstrual intensity and menstrual cycle times. You hid data that allows for objective and proper research. For example, you removed the data on passengers at Ben Gurion Airport. Instead, you chose to publish non-objective articles together with senior Pfizer executives on the effectiveness and safety of vaccines. However, from the height of your hubris, you've also ignored the fact that in the end the truth will be revealed, and it begins to be revealed. The truth is that you have brought the public's trust in you to an unprecedented low, and you have also eroded your status as a source of authority. The truth is that you have burned hundreds of billions of shekels to no avail for publishing intimidation, for ineffective tests, for destructive lockdowns, and for disrupting the routine of life in the last 2 years. You have destroyed the education of our children and their future. You made children feel guilty, scared, smoke, drink, get addicted, drop out, and quarrel, as school principals around the country attest. You have harmed livelihoods, the economy, human rights, mental health, and physical health. You slandered colleagues who did not surrender to you. You turned the people against each other, divided society, and polarized the discourse. You branded, without any scientific basis, people who chose not to get vaccinated as enemies of the public and as spreaders of the disease. You promote in an unprecedented way a draconian policy of discrimination, denial of rights, and selection of people, including children, for their medical choice. a selection that lacks any epidemiological justification. When you compare the destructive policies you are pursuing with the sane policies of some other countries, you can clearly see that the destruction you have caused has not only added victims beyond the vulnerable to the virus, the economy you ruined, the unemployment you caused, the children whose education you destroyed. They are the surplus victims as a result of your own actions only. There is currently no medical emergency, but you have been cultivating such a condition for 2 years now because of lust for power, budgets, and control. The only emergency now is that you still set policies and hold huge budgets for propaganda and psychological engineering instead of directing them to strengthen the healthcare system. This emergency must stop. End of quote.